Feel, mate.
And I'm staring down the barrel.
Jesus. Yeah, you are.
Are we going on zero?
It'll be a placeholder,
Oh yeah.
and then it'll be down, fucking motherfucker, and then into it.
Okay.
We are. You are live.
No placeholder?
Done. You're live.
Oh, hello. Welcome back to Their Side. You're here with Lucas Colson here, your host, and today we've got part two. We've got Mr. Shane George. We just can't get enough of this guy. He's come back again. And maybe it was because he had so much to say before and we didn't get through it all.
Gluttons for punishment.
Yeah. Well, I think we thought you were a good catch, so we had you back to tell us some more stories.
It's nice to think someone thinks I'm a good catch.
Now, especially at your vintage. Okay, so I do have an introduction for those people who missed the first part, and if you have missed the first part, make sure you go back and watch it on their site. It's on YouTube. Shane George. So Shane, you grew up in Dandenong. You got into skating about 15 or 16 years of age.
Yeah, it was skating earlier than that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's when it
That
really,
was when it
really got the
clicked.
bug.
Yeah.
Big boards, wide boards,
Yep.
not skinny penny boards.
Yep. Paran. Da-da-da.
17 years of age, skating became your life.
Yep.
Yep. Inspired by Skateboarders magazine.
Yep.
Plexiglassed
Mm-hmm.
posters that you'd put on your bedroom wall.
Yep.
Paran became your home.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, you're part of the Elwood crew.
Yes.
You got involved in the punk scene's music and all things skateboarding.
Yep.
You skated all different parts of Melbourne. You guys.
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks for coming back.
My pleasure.
What brings you back to Melbourne?
Actually, back to Melbourne for my father.
Yep.
Not travelling too well, so I had to get an operation done.
What's
So,
your dad's name?
Trevor.
Should we call him Trev?
Yes, Trev. Yeah, so it came down a bit of a rush job. Come down to just be here for an operation he has to go through. He's was a bit of a touch and go operation. So all signs so far seem to be that he's doing okay. So, but it'll be a long haul for the next couple of weeks for him. I think if we can get through this next couple of weeks, then it should be an upward run then.
So it's a good thing that Dad's having an operation.
Yeah. They found a cancer in his bowel that they didn't know was there, and so it looks like it was complicating other things with the blood cancer he had, so with the myeloma. So
Yeah.
one of those things where he's gone 3 for 3, so he's got 3 different types of cancer. So
Yeah, right.
but still,
Giving it a good
still
crack.
punching on. He's
Yeah.
giving it a good crack, still punching on. He
Yeah.
was cheeky with the nurses last night apparently after the
nice.
operation on Tuesday, and
Yeah.
I think he was using the F word a fair bit this afternoon after I'd left at a couple of others. So
Right.
he's got the spirit still.
You said that he was a bit shocked when you rocked up.
Yeah. Probably the first time I've ever seen my dad sort of cry.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's just the emotional side of everything that, he's just sick and tired of being sick and tired. So he's also, the week prior, he had a visit from a brother that he hadn't, seen in 10 years. And I have a feeling he might have been sillily thinking that everybody was gathering to say goodbye.
The last rites or something?
Yeah, but I rolled in and we had a little bit of a tearful moment for a couple of minutes, and then I sort of looked at him and said, I'm not here to say goodbye, mate. I'm here to make you start swinging. So he's doing good for what he's been through and how run down he is. He's doing all right. So, but yeah, that's what brought me back.
Awesome.
So,
Well, not awesome, but I'm glad you come back to see
Yeah.
your dad, and I
Yeah.
hope he's going to get better.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming to have a chat with us. So
Yeah, no.
I looked through your last episode
Yep.
and really enjoyed it,
Mhm.
and didn't want to cover the same topics very clearly about the things that we'd spoken about before.
No worries.
And we had a chat during the week.
Yep.
Obviously.
That's right.
And we were trying to think of things he hadn't talked about
Yep.
in as much detail.
Mhm.
And look, some of the things that came up were, probably talking a little bit about motion.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
and what was happening around that time.
Yeah.
And the team in general.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
motion was one of those things that was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It grew sort of not just rapidly, but very, what's the word? The word is organically, thank you.
There you go. Thank you very
Exactly right. Frank was the absolute be-all and end-all glue for all of us. Pulled together a whole heap of guys, and many of us had already been hanging with each other, living with each other, skating with each other for quite a few years.
Yeah.
So, but the motion thing was one of those things where I think a lot of us got a kick on and a move on from that we wouldn't have probably gotten. It was very family based in the end. We all were there for each other, and the team was there for Frank. So
Where was Frank from?
Frank's Melbourne based as well. He had been down Lawn Way, I think, originally. I'll get him to correct me at some stage. But he had come out of the surfing scene and everything through Lawn and down that way. He'd been involved with, I think Gavin was the guy that was the initial starter of motion, I believe, and that was surfboard based. And
Was Frank
based
a
around the
60s like skateboarder or anything?
I'm not sure how much skating he did when he was younger, but the awesome thing that I remember about Frank was once the team got going, because they were a shop obviously in Greville Street in Paran, that it was very little time before he had a board put together and he was skating with us, and because of his surfing background and that, I'll be corrected, but I'm pretty sure he was either late 30s or on the 40 mark.
Yep.
And he was skating with us. There's actually on that How We Rolled side of mine, there's a pool session in Brighton where we barged a pool in a house in Brighton where people had gone away, and there's photos of Frank hitting tiles and all the rest of it in this pool. So he learnt. Yeah, he had no fear. He took some good slams too.
Did he?
Had a couple of good hippers and elbows in Paran. So he pushed it and was really keen to skate, and he had that real flowing surf style. So
he wasn't a skater, but
Not at
started
all.
to skate.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
from my understanding, I think he might have rolled skateboards, as most surfers did, through the 70s. He was keen to to skate with us and be a part of the crew.
So who was on motion? Who was first on motion, or how did it start up?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Chris Payne, Bogdan Kekic, Kobe Holding. I think Scott Holding was part of the team as well. Myself, I think Andrew Knightley was a skater there for a bit as well. It was mostly a lot of the Elwood crew and some of the Paran boys. And then it ebbed and flowed. Eddie Lawrence, and then we started to bring in some of the younger crew that were, doing good things. Obviously Dom Kekic rode, for a while because Bogdan was on the team. And it sort of morphed out of the Elwood crew scene, which is another thing that we sort of talking about was...
If we were to chuck it into the timeline somewhere, what timeline does it kick off at, the motion team? What year?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Is it pre-leather jackets and punk?
No, well, that's the interesting thing. At that stage, we were all wearing sort of jeans and leather jackets because we were also starting to go out like it was Chase's Wednesday night at Hard and Fast and inflation and
the beginning of the end.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly right. Rolling into places and getting drink cards and all that sort of thing because of but we also had links through Chris Payne and guys like that, and there'll be other people that I can mention too. Matty Davis will be a good one to back up a lot of this too. Like I was working with Matty at Lock and Load as a roadie, and we were working with Chris Payne was obviously in bands, Mantissa being the main one that most people know, Killing Time, Mantissa. So we were starting to really like go out a lot and club and be involved in the hard rock scene. And my band was always hard rock, you know. So,
So you had your own band, did you?
No, I did. I played the drums for many years, and then and had a couple of bands, you know, when I like 16 to 18 and stuff, and then skating took over a lot more for me, and sort of didn't really play that much anymore, but could play. And then once sort of hooked up with Chris and a couple of the other guys that were in the rock scene and in the punk scene, started going and seeing bands all the time. And then Chris was the one who actually taught me how to play guitar.
Oh, right.
So I started playing guitar a lot more. But I didn't do it during those years. I wasn't in any bands. I just, worked for bands or worked as a roadie.
This is the hedonistic roadie guy.
Yeah.
So Motion. How often would Motion get together? Like, what
80s.
What would they do?
They opened the shop in Paran, in Greville Street.
Yeah,
and,
in the heart of it.
Was in Greville Street, or was it in St Kilda first? Might have been just off. It might have been in St Kilda first, the first shop, and then they moved to. Maybe it was the other way around. Oh, I can't fucking remember.
Someone will correct us, I'm sure.
Yeah, but
someone correct us.
Yeah, from memory, they were doing the thing like everybody else does. Sort of, you know, opened a shop where they had boards and clothes and skateboards and
surf stuff.
Yeah, and then were sort of floating to facilities and looking at crew. And obviously, we'd heard about the shop that had opened in Paran and dropped in to see what they had.
New shop, let's go check it out.
You know, like, and made connection with them, and then they'd see us skate, and then it just sort of morphed from that. That's what I mean. It was very organic the way it sort of happened.
Yeah.
And it, you know, like Frank and I shared a house, you know, in Paran.
Oh,
okay. We, you
so
know...
was it flow? Was it kind of flow stuff
first?
Or?
It was. But they were making their own clothes and everything as well. Like, they had Mo jeans, and they were doing T-shirts and that. But it was, when it came to the skateboarding side, they were flowing stuff. And you got to remember, because we had, like, Johnny McGrath with Primate at that stage. He was kicking that all off the ground. And... You know, so, and then, you know, with people like Simon Reynolds, Simon was on the team too. How can I forget Sack? You know, like,
who's that guy? Is that Simon guy?
Yeah, it's just some guy that we met. Because I had many share houses with Sack as well. So,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, actually, with some of he was only a couple of years older than us, but he was much wiser and much more streetwise.
Did he get around the house and be quite fastidious and make cups of tea like he does now?
No, yeah, well, he was very much a tea drinker and stuff, but we were all debauched back then too, though. So we were all drinkers and stuff. But no, there was always cups of tea involved, always, right back as far as I can remember.
He's a classy chap.
He always has been. Pinky off the glass too.
So Motion would go do demos. Motion would do comps.
Because I was doing VSA and everything at that stage too. So and that, once again, it sort of
two things going on
grew.
At the same time.
Yeah, Frank ended up. We organised a trailer and built a whole heap of street ramps so we could go and do street demos. So VSA would use them as well as Motion would use them. Under Southland Shopping Centre, I think was one. You know, we got that was a Motion one. It was a Motion demo and comp.
Yeah.
So a bit of a demo, and then we had a street comp.
Okay.
So,
and what sort of shit were people doing at that point?
Oh, look, that's when it was all starting to go off. You know,
like jump ramps. And...
Yeah, it was all jump ramps. Jump ramps to rails, quarter pipes. You know,
rails like slide on.
Yeah, but usually the rails. I think there was only ever one that was low that you could do like low tricks on. Usually they were coming off like off a
box
jump
ramp or a jump ramp.
Yeah, exactly. You know, or off a box. So. Yeah, we were just trying to build the most advanced stuff that we could at that stage.
Did you guys go on tours with Motion?
Yeah, we did Canberra.
Yep.
We did a couple in Lorne. We went out through Traralgon, you know, like out through, you know, Maui and Traralgon and areas like that. Yep. I was also riding for Las Vegas at that time, which was a little shop in, I think they were in St Kilda. No, Elwood maybe. So I was getting clothes flowed by them.
Right.
Yeah, you got to remember too, some of the guys that were riding for Motion were getting sponsored by like Hardcore for boards or whatever, but were riding Motion clothes and being part of the Motion thing.
Okay, so they got their hardware and decks and stuff from Hardcore, and they got their clothes.
And because they were part of the family.
Yeah.
Dom Kickage would be a classic one. Like, you know, he was coming up, he was only a young fella at that stage. You know, we're talking, you know, 12.
Yeah.
Even younger when he was first brought into the fold. We all watched Dom morph from a 6-year-old through to what he became.
Something amazing.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. And how long did Motion hang around for? How long was it about?
Yeah, I think the other partner that was involved with Frank was an interesting bloke. It was more due to his mismanagement, etc. From what I can understand, that
There's
where
another
things
partner,
sort of fell
wasn't
apart. Yeah. We don't mention his name though. So
Ooh.
he Frank sort of, I think, rolled it along as long as he could, and then there had to be a point where it separated just for sanity's sake and all the rest of that sort of thing. So I think probably it would have been by the early 90s or so, I reckon, where it was starting to fold up a little bit and it got pulled back a bit, and I think it went back to Gav doing what he did with boards and stuff in lawn.
Mm-hmm.
Gav was a shaper of major renown here,
For
in Victoria. Yeah.
Okay.
He had a long history in the surf scene, and I think he still shapes now. I'm not 100% sure.
Was there any crossover with you guys who skated? Did you try surfing
Bogdan,
and stuff? Or?
funnily enough, the port crew and Stakehead and Raymond were the port crew who skated and surfed, and Bogdan and Kobe had come from the surf scene and were skaters as well. And it was interesting because once they really started skating, the surfing tailed off a bit. But Sax always surfed as well. I remember trips down to Torquay where we'd stay at Sax and the boys would take their surfboards and everything as well, and that was the whole idea behind going down. We'd ride the Mini out the front of Rip Curl, etc. when they first put it in, but the boys would also be hitting, like Jan Juck and Joanna, and hitting all the spots down there to surf. I did a little bit of surfing, pre sort of meeting all of these boys, but didn't really surf with any of them. My surfing had sort of petered out because I wasn't that good at it by about 18.
Yeah. So,
but there was definitely a connection there. And that was the other thing, because of people like Bogdan and Kobe and Stake and Ray. They weren't involved with motion, but those guys had all known each other from the Elwood and Port Melbourne scene for many years, from when they were in school together. So they had a strong history in skateboarding, surfing. Sorry. Yeah.
So you also talked about cheapskates as well.
Yeah,
what was cheapskates?
It was pre-motion.
Yeah.
They opened that shop on Commercial Road, right near Paran Ramp and Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the name of the guy that ran the bloody shop. Anyway, it was the same sort of thing. It was shop flow.
Yeah.
It wasn't really like sponsorship. You wear my wind cheaters and my t-shirts when you're in demos and comps, and I'll flow you whatever you want in regards to decks and trucks and wheels and stuff. So I think I can't remember, but I think they were doing their own wheels at some stage too, from memory. So it was easy for them to flow.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So that was preceding motion than cheapskates was, and it was just a small shop.
Yeah, no, well, it was sort of set up like at that stage it was a fairly decent shop, like boards on 3 walls and glass counters everywhere and clothing and all the rest of it. They were a fairly big player at that stage, from what I can understand. But they were more like your General Pants or your, you know what I mean? They had collateral behind them from other companies, and they'd sort of decided, they can make money by being involved in the skate scene, and opened up shops. I think they opened them up in Sydney here, and I think maybe even in Brisbane.
Yeah.
So, but that was definitely just like a shop flow thing, and that didn't last very long.
Do you have a favourite shop back in the day?
Yeah, look, well, it's funny, because motion was all encompassing for all of us. I've got a lot of fond memories of motion in the shop. Visited Snake Pit here and there. I worked at Melbourne Surf. I worked at Surf Dive Ski in Burke Street. I've got some fond memories of working at Surf Dive and Ski with Sack, but then, the guys that were running it, once again, it was Surf Dive and Ski. So it was about, boards going over the counter and money coming into the tills, So Melbourne Surf is probably, from 16 years of age or something, working part-time there on a Friday night and a Saturday morning. Linny was just, she was the absolute grandmother of skateboarding in Victoria. She did so much for us guys that were trying to skate and couldn't. She'd flow us a new set of wheels and take the wheels off ours, and we'd put them in the second-hand counter, to help, and then you could pay off those wheels. And if those ones sold to somebody who needed a cheap set, then... And she'd do that. Tony would never know about it. If Tony had ever known about it, he would have been like, can't fucking do that, and I worked for them, I don't know for how long. My memory's pretty vague back then, but it would have been 12 or 18 months, and then I got not so much poached by Surf Dive, but Zach was like, you can earn more money over here and come over and do that, and so that was where really the sort of shop thing really sort of took off for me. See, this is the funny thing back then. you sort of worked 2 or 3 different jobs so that you didn't have to work during the day.
Yeah.
So you'd work Friday night, you might work a Tuesday, Friday night and Saturday at Surf Dive Ski.
Yeah.
And then I'd work in a bar, you know, like on Monday and Wednesday. And then you'd have your weekend relatively free, but you'd have your days free.
Yeah.
So, and that was it, so that we could skate, you know. So by the time I was 19, I was working bars and clubs and working, and I think I was working at Taco Bell's in South Melbourne.
Taco Bell's.
Yeah, you know, so it was all just about skating and rock and roll.
Yeah.
Everything you did was about that, you know, and oftentimes you're on the saucy roll on the side as well, you know, like, so you'd be, you know, putting in a doll form and, you know, like, working for cashies and...
I have no idea what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah,
fair enough. It sounds a bit dodgy, to be honest.
Yeah, extremely, you know.
Yeah.
But that was, back then it was a lot easier too. You could get someone to put your form in for you because it was all forms. There was no
Of
photo
course,
ID,
yeah.
no photos, no cameras in the thingo, and there was times where, you know, you'd be absolutely rotten from the night before and you couldn't get out of bed because you were hungover like a bastard, and your mate would go in and put your doll form in for you.
Yeah.
So he'd put his in at 10 and then go back in there at 12 and put yours in. You know, like...
Yeah, no problems with that system at all.
Yeah.
One of the things you talked about with me during the week is that you got to spend some time with some sort of, you know, iconic kind of key skateboarders. And one that blew my mind, because I was there down at, I think it was Ramp Ride 2, was the Alva team.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
They, from my memory, they hung out through SAC. And
Yeah.
stayed at SAC's place, and a couple stayed, you know, somewhere else, I think. But, you know, Craig Johnson, Danforth, Tex, you know. My fondest memory of that was the place that SAC was staying in. It was up Inkerman Road somewhere. So I don't think it'd be like St Kilda, but I can't remember if it was called like North St Kilda or East St Kilda. Anyway. We'd had a big feed of a Chinese meal sort of thing, you know, like a big stir fry thing, but with some mushies in it. And
we're not talking your average garden mushroom,
we're not
are
talking
we?
your average garden mushroom.
We're talking special mushrooms.
Yeah, and
yes.
all of us fired up, and we rode down Inkerman Street with the other boys, hit an old service station. But it had the pumps taken out and everything, but still had the curbs and
best
like
curbs ever.
rail curbs, you know, around the outside, and then the concrete bit in the middle where the pumps would go on.
Yeah, yeah.
And we must have spent like an hour there. Slappies, you know, you've got to remember Borgie Copers, all the rest of it. Rails had just come in, so we were doing board slides, slappies, you know, 50-50s, doing all different sorts of just curb tricks.
It would have been about 10 mil of nylon.
Yeah, with all of those boys. And then down, and like no trams, no nothing like that, just 8 or 9 all in, because we were in the rock and roll thing too, so we were wearing like jeans and, you know, Vans, studded belts, leather jackets, you know, dreads, hair. Everybody had hair down here at that stage. And
you stinky bastards,
down Inkerman Street to St Kilda Road, and down St Kilda Road and hitting car parks with the Alva boys.
That sounds pretty
And
cool.
it was just wild, you know, like, and I remember I don't think we'd even gotten 20 metres or something out of Sac's driveway down the road, and I remember hitting a stone at full, like trying to keep up with the boys at full noise, and whoosh, and it was just like you get up, everybody was giggling their heads off, laughing and pointing, and you just got up and just kept going. Everybody was in hysterics. You didn't feel jack shit. So, but yeah, big fond memory that one. That was one of those blowout moments that you sort of like, I can't actually believe I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like, because they were. That poster of all of those boys on that side of that industrial building with all the steel stairs, the classic Alva team, you know, like there's a photo from, funnily enough, I think it's from that Southland demo and comp of the motion crew.
Yeah.
And it's very similar. It was a black and white photo that I took. I'm not actually in the photo. I think I'm in one. We got somebody to take a photo and I'm actually in it as well, and I'm squatting down in the front. But you'll see there, we're all wearing like leather jackets and it's that same sort of look, the way everybody's sort of standing and, you know, like posing. And we were really influenced. I was very heavily influenced by a lot of the early skaters, you know, your Salbers and and the Alva team and Dwayne and, you know...
People a bit more rock and roll. A bit
Yeah,
more punk.
you know, a bit more punk and a bit more hardcore and, you know, that surf skate edge into the, you know, because I was very heavily influenced by the skating from the 70s.
Yeah.
You know, in my psyche, because of, like we said, the posters that I had on my wall were from 1970 skateboarder magazines, you know, like, especially the late 70s, you know, so...
What were the boys like? What were the Alva team
They were all
dudes
awesome.
like?
They were all
Yeah?
full on. Like, you got to remember too, you know, at the age I was and the build that I am, you
Yeah.
know, Craig Johnson's like, you
He's
know,
a big man.
dreads at that stage, mate, big, heavy.
I remember he
black.
used to have his
Yeah, he
dreads
used
to
do
the
it
top
up
of
through
his
the top
helmet.
cut a hole out of his helmet,
Yeah.
man, coming up out of the helmet.
It looked fucking
But they were all
sick.
Danforth intense as, you know,
Yeah.
like, but smooth and cool.
Yeah.
Rock and roll wise, that's just reminded me of something. Sitting with Mike Muir and the boys from Suicidal Tendencies in a booth at the Espy, having beers, and Mike had his bandana on, like low. And once you met him, he was a piss taker, a giggle man.
Really?
Oh, he was just. But somebody had come up, see us sitting there with it was with Chris. I'm sure Matty Davis was there too. Sack, Mike Muir, Rocky. Trying to think of the name of the young guitarist at that stage, and we're all having beers, like sitting in a booth. You know, people would walk past and go, and they'd come over and Mike would go from like, yeah, man, so we were just doing this, and you're going to take us surfing this weekend, and you know all that, just talking like that. And somebody'd come up and the scarf would go down right over the eyes, and he'd start doing all sort of psycho, you know, like talking
Wow,
all real
that's really
weird and
interesting.
fucking, you know, like, and people would sort of like, oh fuck, he's
So it's
weird,
almost
and
like
walk
a
off.
persona.
Yeah, and to keep people the fuck away from you.
Yeah,
you know, like,
right.
That's another one that sticks in my mind vividly, was sitting there and that I was just like looking, and I was in hysterics. Because then it'd be like, can't wait for the next person to walk up and try and say g'day to us, you know, like, because it was like, and when I first met him, it was very much the same.
Does he
Yeah.
live in Australia now?
I'm not sure. I
thought someone said he lived on the Sunshine Coast for a bit.
anything's possible with sort of
Yeah.
those sort of guys with the way they can travel and all the rest of it. You know,
Yeah.
Phil Anselmo, got to meet Phil and the guys, got to meet Jane's Addiction, you know, like backstage.
Yeah.
You know, can't talk too much about what I did that night, but, you know,
I think you did.
Perry Farrell was pretty interesting.
Pretty
you know,
interesting guy.
Yeah, and once again, but then again, Soundgarden, waited for them for years and years and years to meet them. Like, they were my heroes, my pinnacles at that stage, apart from Alice in Chains and a couple of those sort of bands. And Frankie from Motion was running a night at the back of the Palace.
Yeah. I know, in the back room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a surf skate inspired night. We had,
Yep.
you know, monitors up. We had like all sorts of movies going. Was all, and often, and this was around the time. So Soundgarden would have been for the big day out.
Yeah.
So it was an after party there, and we got them to actually come to this after party and all the rest of it. And yeah, and it turned out that, you know, I ended up punching on with Kim Thale and the bass guitarist Strody over the pool table. And it was one of those ones where somebody that I'd waited for, they poured beer over the DJ's desk because they didn't like the music he was playing.
Oh.
And then after they'd done that, they came over to the pool table and tried to take the pool table over, and I was running the pool table for Frank.
Yeah.
So yeah, I tried to take a couple of swings, and I think I got one or two connected, and the next thing I know, I remember being off the ground with a big arm around my neck, being lifted off the ground. It was one of our bouncers. He was just whispering right in my ear, so I just, Shane, please don't do this, don't do this.
Yeah,
Just
right.
come with me. So we ended up pushing them out to a back room. Well, Frank did. He got it all sorted and gave them drink cards and pushed them out to a back room, pushed a pool table out for them out into that back room. But it was wild times back then. The way things crossed over and the way skating and music and sort of clubbing and all the rest of it went in at that stage. As I said to you before about that organic thing, it was sort of like, it was weird to be skaters and walk into Chasers on a Wednesday night for Hard and Fast.
Yeah.
And we'd be all dolled out. Like, I used to wear cowboy boots and upholstery pants and, you know, cut off Guns N' Roses t-shirts, and I had hair down to here.
Oh,
like,
please say you've got some pictures of that. Please.
yeah, we do have some pictures
Excellent.
of that, yeah. But you'd roll in and, you know, Julie Marrington had, like, drink cards for all of us, and we go up to the God's Bar and hang it up there with, like, all the rock and roll heads, and, yeah.
But there was a number of kind of, what would you say, music kind of festivals and stuff where ramps started to appear and stuff, wasn't
Big
there?
Day Out, the first one was probably we'd done Moomba and stuff like that, and we'd also done Melbourne Show with the Reginato's ramp.
Yep.
Rob and John Reginato, they put their ramp in there. I've got pictures of that as well.
That's not when Alan Losey was there, no? It's a different time.
Just
Big M?
after.
Right,
just
okay.
after, I think. Losey did the...
86 or
Yeah,
something.
then Melbourne City Square. Yeah, so I think it might have even been the same year that we did the Melbourne Show one. Johnny McGrath, Sack, The Reginado boys, brothers, skated in it as well. Tony Hallam, pretty sure. It was your Melbourne vert skaters, CP. So that was when things were starting to kick up with people building ramps for actual concerts and so on, like, you know, gigs. What were you calling festivals? Matty Davis and a couple were involved with the building of the first ramp that was done, which was the big day out in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then that went on the road.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember who was the main builder of that ramp, because that was one of the very first ones that was ever built to be built and pulled apart and moved.
To travel.
Yeah. And that would have been when that side of it really started to kick off. And I actually wasn't involved. I was working for Killing Time or Manchester at that stage. So I didn't really have anything to do with the ramp that day, apart from, I can't remember if I had a hand in maybe supplying a couple of skaters or getting a couple of guys to be able to skate in it. But at that stage, I was sort of, because that was more hardcore, I think, were involved with that. Maybe like the Hills brothers were a lot more maybe involved with that. I remember I was working that day just for Mantissa. So I didn't really have a great deal to do with the skate thing from the big day out onwards.
I can remember they had a ramp. We went to it would have been one of the first years they had the falls on.
Yep.
Down Lawnway.
Yep.
And there was a ramp in the middle of a paddock there one time. I'm not sure if you...
It would have been, no, I had nothing to do with that. Didn't ever go to any of the falls ones either.
Yeah.
That would have been the spill on from that, from the big day out. It would have probably been maybe the same ramp and the same people that were running that ramp and hiring it out to the big day out crew. Yeah. So, but yeah, that was, once again, that was when it was really going into the big money side of the organisation side of things. And VSA couldn't compete with that.
For you, do you remember kind of where you were when, you know, that whole kind of 90s vert thing did the down nosedive?
Yeah, well, so that would be sort of probably around the 95-ish mark, wouldn't it? It was probably mid-90s where it was really tailing off.
Maybe even a bit earlier.
Yeah, I'd started to lose my way, as we talked in the last interview, at the end of the last interview.
Or find yourself.
As well. Well, eventually found myself. It took me a few years to find myself.
You just went the long way.
Yeah, I went the very long way around, yeah. Oh, the long way down and back up maybe is probably a better way to put it. I remember I ended up working for Hardcore over in Abbotsford. And at that stage I was sort of, you know, dealing with my demons.
What were you doing there in the job?
Just warehousing.
Yep.
Ben and Tuss were there. I used to see them here and there at that stage. And that would have been around that time when then Ben went down the path that he did.
Yep.
And then from there, I remember I got into downhill mountain biking for a little bit, and I was riding motorbikes a lot more too, so I was sort of getting into riding big bore sports bikes and, you know, doing wheelies down the centre of traffic down St Kilda Road.
That's right, you were telling me.
And then worked for Dangerfield, was who I ended up working for. I worked for them for 2 or 3 years, and I opened up a piercing company and imported piercing jewellery from a mob in England. And I worked for Dangerfield. But it's funny, for all my boganness and all the rest of it, I was doing warehousing and everything for Dangerfield as well, and started with Worn Again Jeans, and with Revival, which was another shop. Yeah, right. So
Dangerfield's like a split off of...
Yeah, well, Revival was 2 of the boys that were mates with the guy who owned Dangerfield. And so they did all the vintage gear and everything, and Dangerfield were doing all of the design and new style stuff and all the rest of it. So did a lot of their warehousing. But I mean, I was involved with like Alana Hill's first 2 ranges, you know, like in doing all the warehousing and controlling of the stock and all the rest of it for labels like that.
Did she do wedding dresses?
She did, real Art Deco style originally. And then she ended up with 3 or 4 of her own shops and being much more sort of the high fashion end of things, you know. So, I've worked in many different areas. Like, jobs always just seem to pop up for me through knowing someone or something, and they'll be like, "Oh, you'd be perfect to have a go at this," you know. Like, but I'm definitely one of those older element where it was always my understanding to give anything a fucking crack. You tell me how to do it, you show me once how to do it, and I can do it. That's how I got into roadie work, and why I did all right with roadie work for a while there until, you know, like, once again you start missing turning up for work and stuff like that, or you make a simple mistake here and there, and you go out of the scene, or scenes for you change, and you go out of it. You know, somebody could show me how to roll a cable once, and that's it, I'm fine. But I was of the old school where if I didn't know how to do something, I didn't pretend I knew how to do it. I'd go, "Hey mate, can you show me how to do this?" Even if they look at you and go, "Who the fuck are you, dickhead or something, mate?" "Yeah, I'm a dickhead. Can you just show me how to do this once, mate?"
Yeah.
You know, and you do it, and then they'd never have to tell you how to do it again because you pay attention and you do it right. So, yeah, I mean, I was a lead barista for 10 years. You know, I taught people how to make coffee and how to work machines. I worked in high volume cafes, you know, like, got to a point where I was poached to go and work at cafes, and I'd ended up getting to a point where I could work 4 days a week and be on more money than I would if I'd worked 7 days a week. You know,
wow,
like,
that's pretty cool.
But, you know, once again, same thing. I think I get bored quickly.
Well,
I need a challenge.
Well, tell us about your current job.
Yeah, so
what do you do for a crust, mate?
Currently I am a supervisor for a program called Katherine Community Pride in Katherine in the Northern Territory. The company I work for is called Rise Ventures. They're the new incarnation of Job Find. So we are basically like an employment agency who works under the Centrelink banner. We facilitate programs for people on Centrelink payments to fulfil their work for the dole obligations. So obviously where I am, I don't think I have one white fella on my crew at the moment. It's all Indigenous boys. Basically, my role is sort of defined as being a supervisor to run the work for the dole program, but my real role is to help find pathways and create opportunities into employment for these guys. So through education courses, sometimes the hurdles can be something simple as they lost their driver's license 2 years ago, and the job that they want to do, they're going to need a driver's license, because you've got to remember we're very remote. So oftentimes independence and being able to get to a job site is a crux of as to whether you will actually get a job.
It's a hurdle.
So it's usually simple things. There are guys on my crew at the moment that have got more tickets than I've got and will ever get. You know, I've got guys with, you know, working at heights and confined spaces, and, you know, can drive road trains and this and the other, but they can't get a job on at the Air Force Base or with some of these mobs because 7 years ago there was a domestic violence case or something like that, and it's hung over their heads. So then we then go in and try and find a way to create a way to get that expunged, or, you know, for a security clearance, sort of go, well, look, for the last 7 years there's been nothing, you know, like, and we work with other organisations then to help them get their clearances so that they can get a security clearance to work at Tyndall. Or so basically, in a nutshell, I run a work for the dole program, but my real role is to help create pathways into employment for these guys.
What sort of projects do you do with the crew?
At the moment, mine is, because it's Katherine Community Pride, we're directly doing a lot of programs with Katherine Town Council. So the majority of what I do with my guys these days is we do mowing with big, you know, zero-turn mowers and front deck mowers, you know, using all sorts of different types of maintenance equipment, so whippersnippers, chainsaws, you know, anything and everything to do with maintaining gardens, parks. We look after the gardens and the grounds for the airport, the cemetery, the cenotaph, which is because we've got a very strong Air Force and Army influence there for many years.
So cenotaph a memorial or something?
Yeah, it's a memorial for the military that have passed. So most of what we do is helping out the Katherine Town Council in to maintain the Katherine region, hence Katherine Community Pride. So once again, I guess, and we've talked about this, you and I, having connection to, or being respected by Indigenous crew and having a connection to culture and country makes a big difference. There's been 2 or 3 supervisors prior to me that treated a lot of these guys like they were running a chain gang. And that sort of shit just doesn't fly anymore, and never will, never did.
No.
I'm lucky. I've been there for 11 years or so, nearly 12 years now. But since when I first went up to Katherine, it was to work at Nipmuc Tours, which was running hospitality and everything, because of my experience with running cafes and bars and stuff like that, was to run the hospitality side for the boat tours and also for the actual visitors centre at Nipmuc National Park. So straight away went up there to work with Indigenous crew, because the tour guides and all the rest of it obviously are all Indigenous. They're driving the boats and they're doing the cultural tours. So fell in with 2 or 3 of the boys, got along well with them. One of the guys, Magnus, who was we became like brothers. Yeah. His uncle, we used to visit him in town at his uncle's place. Got along really well with old Will. He gave me a skin name.
What's a skin name?
They have there's skin groups, language groups, and I guess regional groups as well.
Yeah.
So skin names determine who can marry who can interact with who, but it also creates connection between communities.
Right.
So by the skin name, it might be somebody that I haven't met, but because we have the same skin name, he's my brother, or he's my uncle, or she's my auntie, or there's situations where I call someone that's 60. Let me put that another way. Somebody that is 7 years old will call me nephew.
Right. Okay.
It's a very complicated process. And it's hard to understand.
It's like a hierarchy, but there's a connection.
But then you've still got, in amongst that, you've also still got other factors that then determine where you sit. So, but anyway,
in the social fabric, of the
Indigenous community, of the mob. So,
but you're kind of, it sounds like you've been there, like you said, 11 years or something. Yeah, is that right? Yeah. So you're kind of understanding about Indigenous culture up that way. You would have had a pretty steep learning curve, and you've had someone who's taken you on and educated you about that. And I still
know, in saying everything that we're saying and what I'm talking about, I actually know 3/5 of fuck all. Right? In all seriousness, my comprehension and understanding of it is extremely basic.
But that's still 30 times more than your average bloke.
Probably, yeah. And look, a big part about all of this, and this is, once again, what we were talking about earlier, if you treat someone the way that you want to be treated, then people respect you. The reason that I'm being as successful in this job as I am, and we're doing as well as we are with the program, and I'm getting the numbers attending, is because I work with these guys. They don't work for me. Yeah.
So there's a flat hierarchy.
Yeah. And it's also, once they know that, as a Muniga, which is white fella, I'm a brother, or I'm a cousin, or, and some of these guys, it's as simple as when they say, oh, you call me uncle. From then on I'll say, sometimes it's a joke, but sometimes you sort of say, oh, uncle, I need your hand with this. Yeah. Just to say that shows that you're respecting the culture. Yeah. Now these guys are younger than me that I call uncle. Okay. So, and this is where it's really weird
it's kind of weird in a chronological age.
Exactly right, but Skin Group has no chronological age. Right. That's the whole thing.
Throw that right out the window.
Yeah. So,
look, one of the other things that I found really interesting too was, you not only have you been able to sort of be accepted or kind of integrate to some degree, and also be quite successful in running your crew, but you've also gone further than that. With regards to sort of the other things you do in the community with your hunting and that too.
Yeah, well, that's another big thing, because I've hunted, for many years I hunted pigs with dogs. From probably the first year that I got up there, it interested me straight away, high adrenaline, full on, you're using dogs to chase them. The dogs don't kill them, rip them or anything like that. All the misconceptions that you hear about hunting pigs with dogs, and all the furfies that all the lefties and the greenies love to play out, it's all a load of rubbish, There are holding dogs and there are bailing dogs. Bailing dogs will chase a pig down and they'll run circles around it and bark at it, just like what you'd see a sheepdog do or anything like that with singling out cattle. Holding dogs do the same thing. They find them, they smell them, they run off the back of the ute, they find them, and then what they do is they grab them by the ears and they just hold them by the ears until you get there. And then you grab the pig with your hands and you stick them with a knife. Right? So did that for many years and hunted mainly on whitefella land. Yeah. On stations and places like that. But then you get to meet crew, as I said, through, somebody from Barunga who you find out is like, now you call him uncle. He's like, you should come out and have a hunt. I've always had guns too, so... but it's once again, you show the respect thing. When I go out to community, they ask me to come out, or, I say, can I come and chase some pigs? They're like, yeah, we'll go. And we'll go, well, how are your freezers?
Yep.
So food-wise, how about we drop 2 or 3 buffalo or redskins, they call clean skins, which is cattle that have gone feral. We'll put 2 or 3 of them down, we'll bone them out, fill all the fridges, fill the freezers, everybody's got food in the community. Then you show me where the pigs are and we'll go and chase some pigs for fun with the dogs.
So it's been quite a reciprocal kind of thing. There's something that the community gets out of it.
Very much so. And that shows respect back to them as well, because they're opening up their lands and their cultural lands and areas to you. The least you can do is show respect. It's interesting because there are guys that will manipulate it, and then they'll, a lot of these areas you've got to remember are dry communities. No grog, there's no alcohol at all in these communities. So some of the more unscrupulous white hunters will, mate, I'll bring out a couple of boxes of beer for you if you let me hunt here, and then, you'll have people in that community that are quite happy to sort of do that, I've always gone the other way with it. It's no alcohol, no smokes, and don't ask me to bring lots of bad food and stuff like that for you, etc. I'll bring boxes of apples, I'll bring, bully beef, I'll bring, lots of fruit juice, this, that and the other. But my main reason, I'll come out, we'll drop killers for you, or we'll do killers, we'll drop buffalo, and then we'll then I can have some fun chasing some pigs.
And sometimes the pig chasing, from what you're telling me, you're actually doing people
feral
a
animal
favour.
Control.
Feral
on most of the properties that I used to hunt, they're all cattle properties or farms where they're doing crops of melons and this, that and the other, and because of the high water and irrigation that they're doing, that brings the pigs in. Right. Plus also the food and the feed crops for feeding cattle. So wherever they're growing sorghum or hay or anything like that, pigs will come in to get that. So they cause millions and millions of dollars worth of damage. Right. Latest CSIRO figures are somewhere around 26 million pigs across the northern top end.
So they breed like flat out, do they?
Full on.
Right.
So most of what we do is usually feral animal
I just had
control.
this really terrible kind of pig fucking sound in my ears.
Blue Velvet comes to mind. Yeah. No, Deliverance.
Yeah, it's just like all of a sudden cue the... It's... Sorry, they just get the insight into my mind.
Don't get me wrong, they squeal and go off their nuts. Some of them do when you get them. The ones that you worry about is when you're running to your dogs and they're lugged up.
What does lugged
up mean? You don't hear a sound. That means they've got the pig by the ears.
Oh, okay.
And so you don't hear a sound because that means it's a big boar. And it's not at all disturbed or perturbed about that.
Do they hang around in a pack?
Yeah,
the pigs?
they hang in mobs.
Or do the male boars just fuck off and run around?
Well, you've got to remember, pigs are more intelligent than dogs. So the boars will hang off the packs of sows and younger ones a little bit, so that if any danger like dingoes or pig hunters or anything like that come in, they'll slip out the back door while all the commotion's going on here. They're very, very cunning. I've had some pretty gnarly situations where you've got one boar in your hand here with the dogs on, and it's at night and you turn around and there's 2 dirty great big boars standing right behind you, just watching you, just waiting for the right chance to either have a go or waiting for you to be that concentrating on this that they can just turn around and slip out the back door.
When they can cause damage to you or the dogs, it's with their tusks?
Bingo.
Yeah, not the teeth?
No.
Tusks. No, okay, so the tusks. And tusks are quite big?
Yeah, well, the big curved ones aren't that much of a worry. The ones we call dog killers are usually the ones that are about that long, and they're usually in a triangle shape. They're really short and sharp.
And are they because they've broken off or something?
No, it's just the shape. They have different shapes and body shapes and head shapes and all the rest of it, just like humans do. There's a lot of different interbreeding of pigs too. So you have, there's a certain amount of domestic, certain amount of feral, certain amount of there's European, there's all different types of pigs. So your Razorbacks tend to be, big shouldered, small arsed, but you'll get pigs that are also barreled, like they're straight along the back. They can have all different sorts of shapes. And the tusks...
Do the government pay people to take them out as well?
Yeah,
because
they tend
it's a
to pay contractors and stuff.
Right.
Someone like myself doesn't generally get paid to do something like that. Usually what happens is you get more access from the landowner, or... Because we do it we do it to do the right thing by the environment. Like
Yeah,
that's the main
yeah.
thing. I'm trying to protect all the native species and everything by knocking pigs. But it's also, I don't want to say fun, but it is.
You
know,
can say
like,
fun.
well,
It's adrenaline.
yeah.
It's
We've got a lot of issues in stuff to do with hunting these days, with the way things are going, with the left and with the greenies and all the rest of it. Is that they try and infer bloodlust.
the gun conversation,
Yeah, and
especially now.
Well, they try and
yeah.
infer bloodlust and everything, in
Yeah.
regards to this, and they try and make out that the dogs are savage things. Like, if you came to my house and met my dogs, there is no way you would ever think that they were hunting pigs.
How many dogs you got?
I've got 2 at the moment.
Yeah.
They're the biggest laphounds you've ever found in your
right.
life. They are mellow at home. And even once they get the chest plates put on and the tracking collars and that put on them, they get focused. They're now working. They're a working dog, just like a Kelpie or a blue heeler or whatever with
A husky
cattle or sheep.
or anything like that.
Yeah, but they're not trying to kill the pig.
No,
They've been trained. All they do is catch it and hold it there for me.
Yeah, right.
They don't even rip their ears or anything, mate.
Have you
Is
lost any dogs?
Yeah.
Through
Yeah, I've lost a couple.
That must be
Mates have
pretty
lost.
sad.
Yeah, crocs are a big problem up where we are.
Fuck. Right. So
Well, pigs
I
go
didn't
to
think
water.
about that.
Pigs generally go to water to try and shake things, unless they know that there's big crocs already in there. And when pigs run away from water instead of running into it, you know there's something big in that water.
And do they have like I was going to say special pig spider sense? No, it's just like the pigs. What they obviously have an amazing sense of smell.
Yep.
So they would smell the.
Yeah,
croc,
their sight's pretty average.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Smell and just that sixth sense that animals have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but their smell is the big one for them, and their hearing.
Yeah.
They're pretty full on with their hearing.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty average eyes.
Pretty average eyes.
And then there's buffalo.
They probably wouldn't hump each other and have that amazing pig sex if they could see each other.
Probably
Is
not.
that right?
I'll tell you now, I've caught a lot of pigs, mate, over my years, and yeah, they're not.
I think
not
we've
the
all
prettiest thing.
we've all had a few pigs. I think. Yeah.
And there's always the joke.
And I'm sure there's a whole heap of ladies out there that are saying that they've had a few boars, and I would be one of them.
Most likely, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and so but over the last few years too, just quickly, 10 minutes. Over the last last 3 or 4 years, last couple of years, I've been back into my buffalo hunting. So
Yeah.
and that's obviously big guns and buffalo. And once again, the majority of what I do is to feed local communities, but I'm also always after that big 100.
You're after a trophy kill to some degree, and they're kind of a pest as well up there.
They're feral. They're classed as feral as well. Once again, you can't just hunt anywhere you want.
No.
Land is either indigenous, or stations.
Right.
There's no free land, crown land, so it's either national park, stations, or indigenous owned.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, a lot of the indigenous owned land is the national park as well.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky that I get to, because of my connection with TOs.
So you can go into the national park because
of the TOs, because they're allowed to hunt in a national park.
Right.
But I have to be with a TO
they can walk
that
in
has
going,
that authority through Parks and Wildlife. You can't just, it's not just any
You've got to be with someone from a mob.
Yeah, but
when you're
that
hunting.
that person also has to be recognised by that local community as being one of
Part
the
of
TOs.
their-
One of the TOs.
What's TO?
Traditional owner.
Got it.
So they're usually the dozen or so people that oversee the whole community.
Yeah.
And run the community.
Yeah.
From an indigenous point of view.
Do you feel at home there?
I love it. Like it's strange, mate. You know, like when I left Melbourne, I was at that point in Melbourne where Melbourne was killing me.
Yeah.
Psychologically more than physically. Sick of the winters, sick of going into the city to work at a cafe. Yeah, you know, like I was at
parking,
and
cost.
Didn't have a lot of the friends that I'd had. Didn't have the connection to crew and didn't have that family feel as
much. And the skating thing
had gone. You know, like which is my own fault. You know, and it's a shame because if I'd kept skating up until that sort of mark. Anyway, I was living in Fitzroy. I remember having this moment at the pub. I'd had a few dramas over the 2 or 3 months prior to that where suddenly realising the people that were standing there smiling at you and having beers with you one night, then somebody else would say, oh, you should have heard them backstabbing you last night, you know? And it's sort of like, I got to this point, I remember I just was standing there one night and just sort of looked around the bar and just sort of went, the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
You know, like... There's got to be something more than this. So packed everything up that I had, sold the fucking road bike that I had, the big bike, my pride and joy, my GSX-R 1000. sold that, packed up everything I had into my my GQ Patrol, and did a road trip up through to Cairns.
I believe it's pronounced Cairns.
Cairns. Did Airlie Beach, Proserpine, got up to Cairns and actually went, fuck, I think I'm 20 years too late. Because it was like 4-lane highway in and out, and and I'm thinking, this is not what I imagined Cairns to be.
Yeah.
I'm spewing I should have probably gone a little bit further.
Yeah.
But anyway, came back to Melbourne, was working at Degarni's in top of Latrobe Street, and realised sort of, nah, Melbourne's not for me anymore. And I saw an ad in the paper for Nipmuc Tours in Katherine, Northern Territory. Thought, oh, fuck, I'll put an application in. There's no way I'm going to get it or anything like that. Next thing you know, I get a phone call, had a bit of a chat. Phone call again the next day saying, we're sending a rep down to interview you. We're prepared to pay for you to bring your vehicle, everything you own. Hotels on the way up. We want you to get up here and try and run hospitality at Nipmuc National Park at Catherine Gorge. What the hell? Give it a go. And I've been there ever since.
And you've got a little fella?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
Finn, my
How
son.
old's he?
He's 9.
He's 9.
Turned 9 in January.
Yeah.
Raise him. I've been raising him myself now for 5 years. His mum lives in Darwin. He ended up with me 5 years ago due to a whole heap of different factors, but ended up with me, and I've raised him pretty much single-handedly. His mum sees him on weekends and 1 weekend a month generally because of the distance between Katherine and Darwin and school holidays. I've been raising him single-handedly now, so I'm
and
a
it sounds
full-time
like
single dad.
And I have those times where my wife goes away and I'm a full-time single dad. Not full-time single dad. I have single parenting duties, and I find it really fucking hard. So
I've been single for 8 years. I have no partner. I have no family up there. When I say I have no family, like my mum and dad and my sister and any direct family are all. There's no one there.
You've got 25 uncles that are 4, but you don't. But none of them can look after the children.
Yeah, I've got some really good friends and who I class as brothers and stuff now up there.
He's a happy looking
basically
kid.
raising him all on my own. So working, I haven't never not worked. I had my own business there and all the rest of it for a while, and it's been a wild ride, but it's shaped me, changed me, made me a better man. Yeah. If you'd sort of said to me 10 years ago that I'd be doing this and would have been successful at doing it, I probably would have thought you were crazy. Yeah.
You mean successful at being a parent? A single parent?
It's been the most rewarding thing that I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It's really changed who I am. I was lucky. I don't know about a lot of you blokes, but being a country town and all the rest of it, I was very lucky. I actually delivered my son.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I was the very first person that he saw in the world.
In a small country town?
It's a good hospital and a decent hospital, but we were lucky. We had midwives there that were like, as he was about to be born, from my partner pushing him out, she looked at me and said, would you like to deliver him?
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Apparently I was one of the very last that ever happened to.
Up in that hospital in the rural area, just because of rules.
Stop. And exactly. So, and I remember looking at him and just realising I wasn't the most important person in the world anymore.
My grandmother said that to me a long time ago when I was probably had my head
epiphanous moment.
Sorry?
I had that epiphanous moment.
Yeah, I had my head firmly up my arse, and she said, "You know what you need? You need a kid." And I was like, "Get the fuck out of here!" It's like that's the last thing I need. But she was so right,
Yeah. So look, it's been hard. I've been through a lot of shit. I've had to fight for my access. Yeah. I've done the right thing by the boy. He's never missed a day of school. Always gone to school with lunch, clean uniform, done everything right.
He's a happy looking chap.
He's a very happy, and he's very, very, very intelligent boy. Yeah. He's 9 years old, but his schoolwork and some of the stuff that he does is like a 12-year-old. He's going to be an amazingly smart little man.
Yeah, good on him.
I've had some issues, here and there in regards to, our co-parenting, etc. Been put through the ringer a couple of times. Yeah. Been lucky enough to stay the course and the truth always ends up prevailing.
Yeah.
This probably leads in very quickly because I know we've only got a few
Yeah.
minutes. For any blokes that are going through any drama and all the rest of it in this sort of situation, you know, like we were talking about Blokes Advice and, you know, the Black Dog and the Australian Brotherhood of Fathers and
what are
all
they?
this sort
They're
of
all
stuff.
like...
Well, BA, Blokes Advice is a Facebook page. They stemmed out of trying to deal with the massive amounts of suicide and depression, etc. in men. 21 men a month commit suicide. These are the current figures anyway, probably increasing, unfortunately. And those 21 men are directly linked to access issues with their children.
So it's a large factor in there.
And there are more men than
suicide,
that that commit suicide every month, but 21 is roughly the number equated to issues with access with kids and custody issues and stuff like that. And that's a really, really huge amount. You know, like you're talking, you know, that's 84 men a month.
Yeah.
You know, 21 men a week are killing themselves. You know, like it's crazy numbers. You know, so the biggest thing I can say here is the worst thing that you can ever do is exit your children's life. If the system, which is stacked against men, and until the legal system changes, there's not a lot that a lot of the other care organisations and everything can do in regards to helping men, etc. And men's mental health care in this country is severely lacking compared to women's. For example, in Catherine, there is not one men's mental health organisation. There are 7 women's ones.
Okay.
There is a women's shelter for domestic
Hear
violence.
another job for
women.
you coming up.
Yeah. I'm a big advocate. I try to use my voice where I can in advocating for men's mental health and for issues like this where things are so stacked one way or the other. Domestic violence goes both ways.
Yeah.
When it comes to parenting and co-parenting and access issues, I'm a big believer that gender should play no part in where we head with access and with parenting. It's about the right parent for the child at the time. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of arsehole men out there, but there are just as many arsehole women. Right? So I think it's very important that we start to remove the gender from the parenting side of things in regards to custody and access issues and just get back to looking at the actual...
Fact.
Yeah, the fact. And also that particular relationship and family issue. We can't blanket this stuff. You know, you need to... Unfortunately, you need to look at it at case by case.
Yeah.
You know, so... but the big thing for me is I think it's important that men, particularly, start to realise that a child's life is going to have less value in it if you remove yourself from it. Even if they're only getting to see you once a month or once every 6 months or through her vindictiveness and nastiness she shuts you out and you've got to go to court and fight. Your child is going to be better off having you in small amounts than that child getting to 16 and realising you killed yourself because you couldn't see them.
Yeah, yeah.
Look, it's been a very interesting ride for me. Finn is very dedicated to me.
Yeah.
He's very connected to me. We went through some dramas recently and he just told the truth, and that's what I told him to say the whole way through. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about your mum. You just say what you want. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
He's still with me. So,
and we're really glad to hear that news. You know, I think there's a whole heap of us in the skating community that, you know, were aware that you were going through some stuff and that you hung in there and you're very persistent. And that the outcome, thankfully, went your way.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
exactly
awesome.
right. Well, I like to think of it that it went Finn's way. That's the
Good
way
way to
I'm
put
sort
it,
of
yeah,
running with it, is that, you know, and look, he loves his mum very much. His mum loves him very much. I love him very much. I've tried to foster a positive and happy relationship, co-parenting, as well as fostering the relationship between Finn and his mum.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will continue from here and be a good and positive thing. I hold no malice. It's important that he have his mother in his life.
You're a good role model.
I hope so. It's a hard-learned experience.
Now, Shane, I think we're going to run out of time now. It's so great to have you here again.
We've talked very little skating this time, but
That's all right.
Thank you.
That's okay.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Really
Yeah,
is. Love what you guys are doing. and this is probably a nice thing too. I think good to see. Just there's a lot of post skateboarding life that is relevant to where we came from our skating, and it's interesting, I think, to maybe hear where people are now from where they were then. It's an interesting way that you guys are starting to pull this into your interviews now, and I think it's a really positive and interesting step, because there's some amazing stories there of a lot of us who are still here.
There's a lot to learn from a lot of people.
Yeah,
I think
the brotherhood is the biggest and most important thing to me. That's something that I've really come to appreciate again, coming back into the fold through 2 and a bit years ago, reconnecting with everybody.
Yeah.
The brotherhood is the thing that I think, and the connection, and the fact that that connection with everybody hasn't been lost.
No.
It's almost strengthened and reinforced, and it's really lovely to see that everybody's there for each other these days.
Well, I think, and I probably speak on behalf of Aaron and Grant as well as, and hopefully a lot of other people, is that we're interested in skateboarding. We're interested in people, and we're interested in sort of a bit of a men's shed thing, if you like.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. Thank you.
Great to see you here again. I think maybe Aaron's over there. I think maybe we should have Shane back again when he's here next time. But maybe we'll have you with some other dudes.
I'd really love to maybe grab Frank and Maddie and a couple of the boys and have maybe one where we can sort of go, right, let's all get together as one, because
let's talk shit and bounce off each other.
Yeah, my memory's fairly shit at the best of times, so it'd be great to be able to talk and have somebody go, yeah, I remember that, or go, nah, that's bullshit.
I reckon if we had 4 of your old crew there, we'd at least be able to have one partial brain there. I reckon.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And be nice to have people talking other than me for a change too. So
you're all right.
Yeah.
Thanks for
my pleasure
coming
entirely.
along.
Thank you and Aaron, mate. Really appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to throw to that camera, Aaron. Thanks for joining us on their side. I'm not sure who's next. It could be Tom Flaherty.
Awesome.
Flaz the man.
Awesome.
BB man himself. So I'll be hoping to try and catch up with him as soon as possible and have a chat. So join us next time. Stay tuned. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you soon. Good work, sir.
Cheers, brother. Much appreciated.
Do you know what I like? We finished?